What they're hiding from you right now. You clicked on this video because something inside you is searching, and I want you to know that I see you. Not in some mystical way, but in the way one human being recognizes the weight another is carrying, the questions they're holding in the quiet moments, the hope they're afraid to speak out loud. This isn't a message from beyond or a prophecy about what's coming in 3 days or 7 days or any specific timeline, because that's not how real faith works, and that's not how real healing happens. This is just me, someone who has walked through valleys and stood on mountaintops and learned that the truth isn't hidden in the stars or in secret messages. It's hidden in plain sight, buried under all the noise we've been taught to listen to instead. So let me tell you what they're really hiding from you. And by they, I don't mean some cosmic force or conspiracy. I mean the world, the voices, the systems, the doubts, the fears, and sometimes even the well-meaning people who don't realize they're covering up the most important truth you'll ever need to hear. What they're hiding from you is that you are already enough, right now, in this exact moment, with all your scars and questions and unfinished chapters. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy of love, worthy of peace, worthy of the life you've been dreaming about in the dark hours when no one else is watching. The voice that tells you otherwise, the one that says you're too broken, too late, too ordinary, too scarred by what happened, that voice is not from God, and it's not the truth, no matter how loudly it's been speaking to you. In the book of Jeremiah, God says He knew you before He formed you in the womb, that He set you apart, that He had plans for you before you took your first breath, and that wasn't conditional on you being perfect or having it all figured out. It was a declaration of your value before you did anything to earn it, before you could even try. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that we had to prove ourselves worthy of what was already freely given. And that lie has stolen more dreams, more peace, more joy than any actual enemy ever could. I'm not here to tell you that angels are whispering secrets in your ear, or that the universe is conspiring to deliver some specific outcome by a certain date. I'm here to tell you that the deepest truth has always been available to you. It's just been covered up by every voice that told you you weren't measuring up. You know what they're really hiding from you? That the person you're becoming is more important than the timeline you're anxious about. That the growth happening in you right now, in this season that feels slow and uncertain, and maybe even stagnant, is preparing you for something you can't even see yet. And rushing it would only mean arriving unprepared. We live in a world that profits from your insecurity, that builds entire industries on the idea that you're not enough as you are, that you need this product, this relationship, this achievement, this validation to finally be complete. And the church, as much as I love it, sometimes accidentally reinforces this by making you feel like you have to perform your way into God's favor, like you have to pray harder, serve more, be better before you can rest in His love. But Romans chapter 5 tells us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us, which means the love came first. The sacrifice came before the improvement. The acceptance arrived before we cleaned ourselves up. You don't have to be further along than you are right now to be seen, known, and cherished by the one who created you. And that truth, that simple, revolutionary truth, gets buried under every message that says you're not ready yet, not healed enough yet, not worthy yet. What they're hiding from you is that your pain has been preparing you, not punishing you. Every disappointment that felt like an ending was actually a redirection. Every closed door was protection from something that would have diminished you. Every delay was an opportunity for you to become someone who could handle what's coming without losing yourself in it. I know that's hard to believe when you're in the middle of it, when the waiting feels endless and the silence feels personal, and you're watching other people step into the things you've been praying for. But there's a difference between a delay and a denial. And just because you can't see the movement doesn't mean nothing is moving. Think about Joseph in the book of Genesis, sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and thrown into prison, forgotten by people he helped, waiting years in the dark for a promise that must have seemed like a cruel joke. But every season, even the unjust ones, was shaping him into someone who could stand before Pharaoh without being corrupted by power, who could forgive his brothers without bitterness consuming him, who could save nations because he had learned to trust God in the pit and the prison. The delay wasn't wasted, it was necessary. And the same is true for you, even if you can't see the full picture yet. What they're hiding from you is that you don't have to have your life completely together to be used by God, to make a difference, to be a light in someone else's darkness. The world tells you to wait until you're perfect, until you're healed, until you have no mess left. But God has always used broken people, scared people, people who were still figuring it out. Moses had a speech impediment and a criminal record when God called him to lead a nation out of slavery. David was an adulterer and a murderer, and yet he's called a man after God's own heart because he knew how to repent, how to run back to God instead of away from him. Peter denied Jesus 3 times in his darkest hour, and Jesus still trusted him to build the church. Your imperfections are not disqualifications. They're the very places where God's grace becomes visible, where your story becomes a testimony instead of just a timeline. What they're hiding from you is that rest is not laziness, that taking time to heal is not wasting time, that saying no to things that drain you is not selfish. We've been taught to glorify the grind, to wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, to believe that if we're not constantly producing and performing and pushing, we're not valuable. But Jesus himself withdrew to lonely places to pray. He rested. He knew when to step away from the crowds. And if the Son of God needed rest, what makes you think you don't? In the book of Exodus, God commands the Sabbath not as a suggestion, but as a holy rhythm, a day set apart for rest, because he knew that we would forget our humanity, forget that we are not machines designed for endless output. Rest is an act of trust. It's saying, I believe that my worth is not tied to my productivity, that the world will keep turning even if I stop pushing for a moment, that God is still working even when I'm still. And they don't want you to know that, because a rested person, a person who is grounded in their worth, is a person who can't be manipulated by fear or scarcity or the pressure to perform. What they're hiding from you is that your feelings are valid, even if they're not permanent, that it's okay to grieve even when you believe in hope, that you can have faith and still have questions. We've been given this false choice, as if you're either strong in your faith or struggling with your emotions, as if doubt is the opposite of belief, instead of a part of it. But the Psalms are full of David crying out to God, asking where he is, lamenting the silence, expressing anger and confusion and fear. And those prayers are scripture. They're holy. They're a part of the story God wanted preserved for us. You don't have to pretend to be fine to honor God. You don't have to perform peace when you're falling apart inside. Bring him the mess, bring him the questions, bring him the anger and the disappointment and the fear, because he's big enough to handle it, and he's close enough to care. What they're hiding from you is that forgiveness is more for your freedom than for the person who hurt you. Holding on to bitterness, replaying the offense, keeping the wound open so you don't forget what they did, doesn't punish them, it imprisons you. And I know forgiveness feels impossible sometimes, especially when the wound is deep and the betrayal was personal and they never even said they were sorry. But forgiveness doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you have to trust them again or let them back into your life. It means you're choosing to release the poison so it stops infecting your future, so you can walk forward without carrying their weight. Ephesians chapter 4 tells us not to let the sun go down on your anger, not because anger is wrong, but because holding on to it gives the enemy a foothold, a place to build a stronghold in your heart. And every day you hold on to what they did is another day they control your peace, even if they're no longer in your life. So forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. What they're hiding from you is that community is not optional, that you were never meant to carry this alone, that isolation is one of the enemy's favorite tactics because he knows you're stronger together. We've been sold this idea of the self-made person, the lone warrior, the one who doesn't need anyone, but that's not the design God intended.
In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. You need people who will speak truth when you're believing lies, who will remind you who you are when you forget, who will sit with you in the dark and not try to fix you or rush you or minimize your pain. And yes, finding those people is hard, and yes, you've been hurt by people who were supposed to be safe, but that doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you ask God for discernment, for wisdom, for the courage to be vulnerable again, even when it's scary. What they're hiding from you is that your worth is not tied to your relationship status, your bank account, your job title, your appearance, or how many people follow you on social media. The world has created measuring sticks that have nothing to do with the things that actually matter, and we